The render times on the Callaway project had been running long all morning, and Nora had learned, over 11 years of this work, not to fight the machine. She refreshed her coffee instead, the good stuff, a light roast from a small batch place on South Congress that she ordered by the bag, and stood at the window of her home office while the progress bar made its slow, honest assessment of her work. Wilson's studio had 2 locations now. The original on East 6th, which she'd opened at 26 with a lease she could barely cover, and a portfolio she'd spent 3 years building from smaller jobs than she ever mentioned in interviews. The second on South Lamar, which had opened 18 months ago and was already carrying its own weight. She had not inherited the capital to do either of these things. She had billed for them, hour by hour, project by project, until the numbers allowed it. This was not a story she told often, because it did not require an audience. Her home was a 1970s ranch style on a quiet street in Bolden Creek. 3 bedrooms, original terrazzo floors she had refinished herself over a long weekend in 2019, a back porch that got evening light for most of the year. She had purchased it at 31 and had been paying down the mortgage with the same methodical attention she gave everything else. The Callaway render completed, she sat back down. Her phone buzzed with a call from a number she recognized, Meg Thorne, who had photographed her sister Sienna's wedding 5 weeks ago. Nora had hired her on recommendation and had not spoken to her since the gallery was delivered. She picked up. Meg's voice was not what she expected. Tight, slightly uneven at the edges, the way a person sounds when they have been sitting with something long enough to decide they cannot sit with it any longer. "I need you to come to my studio," Meg said. "Just you. Don't tell anyone you're coming. I know how that sounds, but please, I need you to see something." Nora was quiet for a moment. Outside, a mockingbird was working through its repertoire in the live oak by the fence. "What time?" she said. She did not go that afternoon. Meg had said tomorrow morning was fine. She had clients until 6, and Nora spent the remainder of the day on the Callaway project and 2 client calls, and did not allow herself to speculate extensively about what a photographer who had shot a wedding 5 weeks ago would need to say in person and in private. She returned home at 5:30 to find Tyler and Jade in her living room. Tyler Marsh was 33 and had been living in her house for 3 years under an arrangement that had begun as temporary. He was her mother's sister's son, and when his relationship had ended and he'd needed a place, she had offered the spare bedroom with a defined timeline that had been extended so many times it had simply ceased to exist. Jade had arrived 6 months later, 27, and comfortable in the way of someone who had never been asked to carry anything. They were on her couch. There were dishes in her sink, not her dishes, or not from anything she had cooked. Tyler had his laptop open and was describing loudly to Jade a business idea that rotated, in Nora's experience, every several weeks without ever proceeding past the description phase. "Hey," he said when she came through, comfortable, proprietorial. "Hey," Nora said. She put her bag on the hall table and went to her kitchen and washed the dishes, because there was no version of the evening in which they did not get washed, and it was simpler to do it herself than to have the conversation. She was aware of this pattern as she was having it. Sienna called at 7:30. Her voice had the particular warmth it carried when she was about to ask for something, a warmth Nora had spent too many years choosing to read as affection. They talked about the wedding, about Ryan, about a design Sienna had seen on someone's page and loved. And then, with the practiced casualness of a person who has rehearsed the transition, "We've been looking at places. In Terrytown, actually. There's one that's so close to perfect, Nora. We're about 35,000 short of where we need to be for the deposit." Nora listened, made a sound of acknowledgement at the appropriate intervals. "I'll think about it," she said, which she had never said before. She had always said yes or let me check the account or of course. She was aware of the difference. She ended the call and stood in her kitchen for a moment, and then she went to bed. Meg's studio was in a converted bungalow off Burnett, filled with the careful disorder of someone who thought visually and organized later. She had the nervous energy of a person who had slept poorly, and she led Nora directly to her editing suite without offering coffee or making small talk, which told Nora that whatever this was had been sitting heavily. I almost didn't call, Meg said. She had her hands wrapped around a mug she wasn't drinking from. I went back and forth for 2 weeks, but I kept thinking, if this were me, I kept thinking I'd want to know. She turned the monitor toward Nora. The photographs were from the morning of the wedding. Pre-ceremony, the kind of coverage that started early and ran through the whole day. A boutique hotel in the hill country, approximately 40 minutes from the ceremony venue. Nora had paid for the block of rooms. She knew the property. The timestamps read 9:47 a.m. The ceremony had started at noon. Ryan Ward stood outside the hotel's side entrance in his rehearsal day linen shirt. He had changed into his suit at 11, Nora remembered, the getting ready coverage, with a woman who was not Sienna. The photographs were multiple. The angles were different, some of them taken from a distance, as Meg had moved through the property covering the morning. Across a period of approximately 20 minutes, the series told a complete and unambiguous story. Meg had GPS coordinates, the hotel address embedded in the metadata. The timestamps were unbroken. "She's married," Meg said quietly. "The woman, I looked. I recognized her from It Doesn't Matter. I know who she is. She's been with him for a long time." Nora looked at the photographs for a while without speaking. She was not performing composure. She simply did not know yet what she felt, and she had never seen the point of expressing things before she understood them. "Can I have a copy?" she said. Meg had a flash drive ready. She pressed it into Nora's hand with both of hers, briefly, and Nora understood that the gesture was meant as something more than a handoff. She thanked her. She drove home. She put the flash drive in her desk drawer and sat down and looked at her monitor, which was showing the Callaway file she had left open. The light in the office was afternoon light, coming in at a low angle through the west window. And outside, she could hear Tyler on the phone in the backyard, his voice carrying the easy volume of someone who has never had cause to worry about being overheard. She was not trying to listen. She was simply in her own house. It was Sienna's voice on the other end. She could tell by Tyler's side of the conversation, by the shorthand between them that had always made her mildly uncomfortable without her being able to say precisely why. She heard her own name twice. She heard the word deposit. She heard Tyler say, "Just keep her thinking. She always comes through when she's tired of the situation." And then, a little later, another 2 months max, "She'll cave." And then laughter, brief and certain. Nora sat without moving until Tyler had gone back inside. Then she opened her browser and searched. Estate planning attorney Austin, Texas, real estate eviction. The name Caroline Hart came up twice in the first page of results, attached to a firm on West 6th. The reviews used words like thorough and direct. Nora made an appointment for the following Monday. She did not confront Tyler that evening. She made dinner for herself and ate it at her kitchen table, and read an article about a restoration project in Marfa that she had been following for months. The dishes were hers. The table was hers. The house was hers, and she had paid every bill connected to it for as long as it had been hers, and for 3 years prior to that as well, in ways that had accumulated without ceremony into something she was only beginning to fully measure. Caroline Hart was 42, and had the manner of someone who had long since stopped being surprised by the things families did to one another, and had channeled that absence of surprise into a very precise competence. She wore reading glasses on a chain and did not take notes until she had heard everything. Nora told her about the house, about Tyler and Jade, about the arrangement that had never been formalized. She told her about Sienna and the deposit request and the overheard call. She took the flash drive from her bag and placed it on the desk. "I haven't looked at the financial picture of the wedding yet," Nora said. "I want to." Caroline looked at her steadily. "Pull everything. Invoices, transfers, anything with your name on it. If this marriage was entered into with an intent to defraud," she paused, "that's a different conversation. But start with documentation." Nora had kept records. She always kept records. It was a business habit that had extended, apparently usefully, into her personal life. The catering, the venue deposit, the bar tab overage, the florist's final invoice, the block of hotel rooms. The amounts were specific and retrievable. Caroline drafted the eviction notice under Chapter 24 of the Texas Property Code. Tyler and Jade had no lease, which meant their tenancy was month to month and terminable with 30 days written notice. The notice was formal, served on a Thursday evening, and Nora delivered it herself. She had considered having it served professionally and had decided against it, not for the drama of the delivery, but because she wanted to be the person who handed it over and remained calm while doing so. Tyler's reaction was loud in the way of people whose loudness has historically resolved situations in their favor. He stood up from the couch, which Nora noted, and he used the words unbelievable and family and after everything. Jade went to the back bedroom and did not come out. Nora said, 30 days from today. She put the envelope on the coffee table and walked to her office and closed the door. Behind it, she could hear Tyler's voice cycling through its stages, and she sat at her desk and pulled up the Callaway file and worked for 2 hours. The weekend that followed brought Sienna and Ryan. They arrived Saturday around noon, having apparently coordinated with Tyler, in the way that Nora now recognized as the operational rhythm of something she had been living inside of without fully perceiving its shape. Ryan grilled on her patio with the ease of a man at home in borrowed spaces. Sienna set her table with her things and put a bottle of wine on it that Nora was fairly certain had come from her own wine rack. Over the meal, with the studied casualness of something rehearsed in a car on the way over, Ryan mentioned that the Austin market was interesting right now, that a property like this in Bolden Creek would move quickly, that for someone living alone, he said it as though it were a condition, a diagnosis, it might make sense to right-size, free up capital, something that could benefit the whole family as it got on its feet. Sienna nodded with practiced timing, supportive, seconding. Nora finished what was on her plate. She said she needed to make a call, excused herself, and went to her office. She called Caroline and said, I want to accelerate the trust. Caroline said, I'll have the draft documents to you by Tuesday. An irrevocable trust under Texas law required care in structuring. Once assets were transferred, they could not be pulled back, and a proper spendthrift provision would place them beyond the reach of any creditor or claimant. Caroline had been thorough. The language was precise. Nora reviewed every page over the following days with the same attention she gave a contract for a major commercial build. She signed the documents on a Friday. The deed transfers were filed the following Monday. Every material asset she owned, the house, both studios, investment accounts, moved into the trust within 14 days. She chose a Tuesday for the dinner. Not a weekend, which would have felt staged. A Tuesday, which was ordinary, and she asked no one to come. She cooked a simple meal and set the table for herself and left the photographs on the table in a neat stack beside the bread basket, printed on cardstock she'd bought at an office supply store on her way home. Tyler and Jade came through from the back bedroom at the usual hour. Sienna arrived with Ryan 20 minutes later, which meant Tyler had told her to come, which was fine. Their coordination no longer required concealment. Nora let them settle. She let them serve themselves. She waited until the table had the particular quality of people who are comfortable, food in front of them, wine poured, the low guard of a familiar environment, and then she set the first photograph face up in the center of the table. She said, I hired Meg Thorne to cover your wedding. She called me 3 weeks after the gallery was delivered. She'd found these in the morning coverage. She moved the next photograph into the center. GPS coordinates and timestamps are in the metadata. I've had a second copy verified by the lab she uses. Ryan's expression did not change immediately. That control, Nora noted, was real, not performance, actually trained. The composure of a man who had been in rooms where things went sideways and had practiced staying still. Sienna looked at the photographs and then looked at Nora, and for a moment Nora saw something in her face that was neither the warmth nor the performance, something stripped back and clear-eyed, briefly visible. I also overheard a conversation, Nora said. She quoted it. She did not paraphrase. She had written it down the same evening and had not forgotten it, and she delivered it word for word, including the laughter at the end, which she delivered without editorial comment. She looked at Tyler. You have 18 days remaining on the notice, she said. The house, Both studios and all associated accounts are held in an irrevocable trust as of last Monday. Caroline Hart at Hart and Wills drafted it. I'm happy to give you the firm's number if Ryan would like to have someone verify the filing. She said goodnight. She took her plate to the kitchen and rinsed it and went to her office and closed the door. What followed was a study in applied pressure. Diane arrived on a Saturday with red eyes and the energy of someone who had assigned herself a diplomatic mission. She sat at the kitchen table and talked about family and about Sienna having made some mistakes and about how Nora had always been the strong one, the capable one, the one who could afford to be generous, as though capability were an obligation and generosity were a tax. Nora offered her coffee and listened and did not agree or disagree and walked her to the door at the end. Sienna called on a Wednesday evening. Her voice had shed the warmth entirely now, which Nora found almost easier. The unadorned version was at least honest in its plainness. She said Nora was making a big deal out of something she had misunderstood. Nora listened for a few minutes and then said she had an early client call and she'd let her go. She pressed end and set her phone face down on the desk. Tyler submitted, on day 22, a handwritten 2-page proposal for a shared equity business arrangement that would allow him to remain in the house as a working partner in Wilson's studio. Nora read it fully, which it deserved, in the sense that any document deserves to be read. She filed it and did not respond. Ryan sent a text from a number she didn't recognize on day 25. I can make this easier for both of us. $8K and we don't need to involve anyone else. She looked at it for a moment with the attention she might give to something she had found on the sidewalk, nodding it, identifying it, leaving it where it was. She deleted it and blocked the number. Day 30 came on a Thursday. The sheriff's deputy arrived at 9. Nora had taken the morning off from the studio, which was the first personal time she had taken in 6 weeks. She stood on the porch in the October light and watched the process conclude. Tyler carried his own bags, which she had not expected, in the particular dignified performance of a man who needed the exit to look like a decision. Jade moved without theater, which Nora respected in an abstract way. The last car engine started. The street was quiet. She went inside and stood in the living room. The couch was the same couch. The terrazzo was the same terrazzo. The house smelled like her candle and her coffee and nothing else. She called Grace at the East 6th studio to check on the afternoon install, and Grace said everything was on track, and Nora said she'd be in by noon. 3 weeks later, she was on the back porch with her coffee, which she had poured herself, and the October morning was doing what October in Austin does, cool enough for a jacket, the sky the particular color of a thing about to open. The pottery class had met for the first time the previous Saturday. 6 people in a studio on East Cesar Chavez, with a teacher who corrected gently and expected attention. And Nora had made a lopsided bowl that she'd carried home, wrapped in newspaper, and set on her kitchen counter where it held 3 clementines and looked exactly like what it was. Her phone rang. Meg. I hope I'm not interrupting, Meg said. You're not, Nora said. A brief pause, the quality of someone gathering something small. I've been thinking about calling for a couple of weeks. I wanted to know how you were, and I thought, if you're not busy, if you might want to get lunch sometime. There's a place in East Austin I've been meaning to try. I can't eat alone without feeling like I'm being watched. Nora looked at the yard, the live oak. The light coming in at its low October angle across the grass, she had not yet had time to fully tend and would get to this weekend, maybe, or the one after. Saturday, she said. Saturday's good, Meg said. Noon. Noon, Nora said. She sat with the coffee after the call ended, and the yard was quiet, and the bowl was inside on the counter with its 3 clementines, slightly uneven, made by her hands, holding what she had put in it. The morning was hers. The porch was hers. The work that waited at the studio was hers. A residential project in Tarrytown she had taken on last month, a young couple's first house, full of original details and a floor plan that wanted only careful attention to become what it was always meant to be. She finished her coffee. She went inside to get ready for the day.